In this last plenary, we will be exploring some of the overarching topics that are also driving activities of our network. So please enjoy this session, stay active, ask questions, and we'll start off with Rain Cernero on opportunities and challenges of transboundary conservation. The stage is yours. If she's in here. Oh, sorry, I didn't check.
I'm here.
Excellent.
Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes, now it's in presenter. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So hello everyone, my name is Ren Cernero and I'm very happy to be here to present our research named Borderless Nature in Science, Opportunities and Challenges of Transboundary Conservation, a Role for Science. We often hear that nature doesn't stop at borders. Indeed, about 1/3 of all high biodiversity sites cross national borders. Connectedness within landscapes crossing borders can be linked to fauna and flora, ecological processes, humans, pollutions, or even disasters. So what type of conservation breaks down borders? It's called transboundary conservation. Transboundary conservation is defined as a process of cooperation to achieve conservation goals across one or more international boundaries. There are different types of transboundary conservation areas defined in 2015, and motivations and objectives to do so differ. Potential benefits, however, can be very numerous, yet transboundary conservation involves conservation and cooperation, which involves high transaction costs. So it's important to always check if the benefits are overflowing the challenges to overcome. Although being established with the purpose of conservation, transboundary conservation initiatives are not always receiving support from scientific data. This can be due to knowledge gaps, availability of the data, accessibility, standardization, or even understanding and trust among parties. There is a big highlight of the importance of evidence-informed policymaking today. But scientific data are not necessarily translated into policy or legal frameworks. The science-policy interactions are often presented as something that needs to be bridged through a two-way knowledge exchange. As a side note, science policy interface lies within the science policy practice interactions, which we will not talk about today. So let's move on to our case study. We worked on the TBCA between Tanzania and Kenya, which is in East Africa and the Western Indian Ocean, as you all know. And it was a proposed coastal transboundary conservation area between Tanzania and Kenya, which we will call from now on the PTBCA. The proposition dates back to 2015, and it has a coastal stretch of about 100 kilometers. The exact delimitation, however, is still under discussion. To have some scientific support for this PTBCA, there was the Transcoast Project. The Transcoast Project was a research and a capacity building project. It lasted between 2016 and 2021 and involved 6 work packages. It had partners in Kenya, Tanzania, and Belgium, the VUB, where I did my master thesis. The research focused on transboundary coastal processes and human resource utilization patterns, as well as identifying further research needs and the science policy interface terrain between Tanzania and Kenya. Our research objectives were the following. Our general objective was to identify opportunities and challenges of transboundary conservation and to evaluate the role of science in a transboundary conservation context. First, we looked at the feasibility to the implementation of this PTBCA, the relevance, the opportunities, and the challenges associated to it. Then, we looked at the need for and usefulness of scientific data. Is it really the lack of science that is constraining progress? And if not, what is constraining progress? To answer those different questions, we used a mixed methods research approach. We used 4 different methods, 2 surveys, 1 questionnaire, and semi-structured interviews. First, we had the Science Policy Interface Survey, which was a survey composed of about 60 questions we designed ourselves, and we put online into the Qualtrics software, which is similar to Google Forms. We piloted the survey before sending it out to potential respondents. Then we had the Diagnostic Tool Questionnaire. This is a freely available questionnaire online, published by the IUCN, and updated in 2021. It is composed of about 100 questions, but it is in the form of an Excel file. So we also put it online into Qualtrics to have a more user-friendly experience. Then we had the semi-structured interviews with various actors involved either in the PTBCA or the Transcoast Project. This was held online through the Zoom software. The interviews were transcribed and the qualitative data analysis was done through MaxQDA. Finally, we had a short survey, the Transcoast survey, which was done through Google Forms. We had some ethical advice for the first 3 methods, thanks to the Ethical Committee for Human Sciences of the VUB. Here are the results regarding those different methods. For the Science Policy Interface Survey, we had about 30 responses, 23 complete ones, and it was mainly completed by scientists. The Diagnostic Tool Questionnaire got 3 responses, which can appear low, but those questionnaires were composed of 100 questions, and it was very complete. So the amount of information hidden in those responses was quite impressive. Then we had 7 semi-structured interviews that lasted between 30 minutes and 1 hour and 30 minutes, and then 6 responses for the Transcoast survey. Here are some results from some quotes from the interviews to give you an idea of the type of information we got. One interviewee said, "The only issue is how this should be put in practice. That can be discussed, but the essence and meaning for the TBCA is crystal clear." Another one said, "I think that without the information that researchers are giving us, there is no argument really that you can present for an administrative change and for countries to work more closely together." Let's move on to our discussion. First, we will look at the current situation of the area. What we call current situation is the current situation facilitating or challenging the implementation of the PTBC. First, we looked at the feasibility, and the situation appeared to be rather favorable to the implementation of the PTBC. There is actually already some transboundary conservation between Tanzania and Kenya, but in terrestrial areas. So coastal transboundary conservation area might imply extra particularities or challenges. Then we looked at the relevance, the benefits, and the challenges. Ecosystems, local communities, resources, and political priorities appear to be interconnected according to our respondents. We focused on our discussion on 5 elements. First, the interconnected ecosystems that was already demonstrated. Then the biggest political opportunity that appeared to be the increase of the national percentage of protected area. The knowledge sharing between Tanzania and Kenya was also a very interesting opportunity, and this can be enhanced by organizations such as Wayanza. Restrictive measures should not be too severe, and local support should not be overestimated. The financial resources are still pretty unknown, but there are some economic opportunities such as tourism with the establishment of the PTBC. There are still some matters to be addressed. First, the exact delimitation of the PTBC is still unknown. Harmonized legal and institutional frameworks needs to be well defined, and enforcement strategies as well. We also discovered that the level and extent of cooperation, as well as the type of TBCA, was still undefined. If we look at the second part of our work, so the role of science, we saw that science was needed and useful according to Transcoast participants. Knowledge gaps appear to be an outdated excuse for inaction, and access to scientific results can be quite problematic, but not necessarily constraining. Multiple factors were actually constraining progress. The most urgent one would potentially be the lack of effective communication. Communication should go both ways, from science to policy and from policy to science. This should be done not only through papers, but also through other media. And this leads us to a very important concept, which is the co-creation of knowledge, which has been mentioned already today and yesterday by multiple presenters. Science could have a particular role in a transboundary context. Science could have the role of an objective common ground according to some of our results. But the evidence should always be combined with multiple values, such as social, political, or economic values. As a quick reflective critique of our research, we acknowledge that we mainly have qualitative results. This is, however, not necessarily a weakness. Qualitative results give a better picture of people's perspective, values, and attitudes, and valuable information on ecosystems and natural resources management approaches. So this appeared very relevant to our research. There are still a couple of limitations. We did not provide any exhaustive list of benefits or challenges. We did not give a complete picture of what is happening on the ground. Not all stakeholders were well represented, and this is still a case study, so there were some interesting insights, but not necessarily to be generalized to all transboundary conservation areas, since context is very important. In conclusion, transboundary conservation has a big potential, yet one should not underestimate the complexity of such conservation. Benefits should always be assessed against challenges, and science can play an important role, the role of an objective neutral common ground, but only to then start composing the evidence with different values. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to acknowledge all the people that made this research possible, in particular the respondents and the people that gave us feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing this important insights of what science can play as a role in managing those areas. Are there any questions from the audience on directly to rain at the moment? If not, no hands up at the moment. You said that the local, if I may jump in, that the local buy-in for those conservation areas is low at the moment. Do you have any ideas of how this could be improved, also to raise acceptance, maybe?
Yes, sure. So actually, there was some disagreement among my respondents. Some people stated that there was some willingness within the local communities, and some said that they were not very pro-conservation. So, but definitely what could help have some buying is to actively involve them in the process and to enhance participation from the early stages.
Yeah, I also made that experience that, oh, it helps. Jose.
Thank you. Thank you very much, René, for your presentation. And just a little comment. I don't know if you know, we had a European Union project exactly to develop transboundary marine protected areas in 2006, 2007. The project was called Transmap, and it was precisely to develop transboundary marine protected areas between Tanzania and Mozambique and South Africa. And maybe you'll find in those results some help to your further research, because we published a lot on that, and it was an early experience on that, and congratulations for you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It's a very interesting project. I have read a lot of reports and the website as well on this project. It's indeed a lot of work and insights in there.
Yeah, and my task was precisely the governance and the complexity of the governance issues that to that. If you want, I can display the data on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Any more questions from the audience? When we talk about the role of science in general and the lack of context-specific communication that you mentioned, if we want to change that, is that like has to be a bottom-up approach, or like coming from the scientists themselves? Can they actually manage to do that? Are they trained to do that? Or does it also have to be a top-down thing from funding agencies? I mean, we have people maybe still here from the Mehrwissen community or from the Blue Action Fund to actually require that if you want to improve the uptake, also to find channels that are working better to address all the issues to a wider range of stakeholders. Maybe just your input on that or your opinion.
Yes, indeed. I think it should go both ways. So as I mentioned in the slides, from science to policy, so scientists should reach out to policymakers, but there is a lack of training in those skills. And this also leads to post-normal science, which would allow scientists to have more training and more interdisciplinary training within their studies to reach out easier to not only policymakers, but also legal actors. But indeed, funding organizations should also appreciate the efforts, and it should not only be publication that should be seen as a successful indicator, an indicator of success, but also how scientists reach out to policy.
Yeah, I agree fully. Yeah, thanks for sharing your opinion. If there's no more questions, thanks again for your talk. It was really nice. Fits
Thank you
very
very
well.
much.
Next up on the agenda is Mika Odido, IOC UNESCO coordinator in Africa, and he's going to share some insights on the regional implementation of the UN Decade of Science for Sustainable Development. The stage is yours, Mika.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes, we can both.
Okay, thank you very much. My presentation will be on the UN Decade for Ocean Science and Technology, and what progress you have made in planning for the decade in the region. First of all, the vision of the decade is to provide the knowledge system needed for policy and action to achieve a global ocean supporting sustainable development by 2030 and beyond. The decade was proclaimed by the UN General Assembly on December 5th, 2017, and IOC of UNESCO was requested to prepare an implementation plan for the decade in consultation with all stakeholders, including member states, other UN agencies, NGOs, virtually all ocean stakeholders. Over the last 3 years, IOC has worked on this, organizing global consultation meetings with stakeholders, regional consultation. We established an executive planning group which took the process forward. The views of people who are involved in the planning, the science community, policymakers, private sector, foundations, and UN partners, including early career scientists. In the planning process, 7 outcome areas were identified. First, a clean ocean where sources of pollution are identified and reduced or removed. Secondly, a healthy ocean where marine ecosystems are understood, protected, restored, and managed. Third, a productive ocean supporting sustainable supply and food supply and ocean economy. A predicted ocean where society understands and can respond to the changing ocean conditions. A safe ocean where life and livelihoods are protected from ocean-related hazards. An accessible ocean with open and equitable access to data, information, and technology innovation. And an inspiring ocean where society understands and values the ocean in relation to human well-being and sustainable development. In order to achieve these outcomes by 2030, several challenges were identified which need to be addressed. The first challenge is understanding and mapping pollutants and contaminants and their potential impacts on human health and ocean ecosystems. The second challenge that needs to be addressed is understanding the effect of multiple stressors on the ecosystem and looking at how we can manage and destroy ecosystems to their biodiversity. The third one was understanding the role of the ocean to contribute to feeding the ocean population. The third was a sustainable development of the ocean economy, understanding the ocean climate nexus, expanding the hazard warning system for all sorts of climate and ocean-related hazards, ensuring a comprehensive ocean observing system that delivers timely data and information to all users, developing a comprehensive digital representation of the oceans, comprehensive capacity building, and ensuring that the multiple values of the ocean for human well-being, culture, and sustainable development are recognized and widely understood. IOC presented this implementation plan based on the 10 challenges and the 7 outcomes to the session of the General Assembly in December last year, which approved the implementation plan and requested IOC to regularly consult member states on the implementation and the Secretary General to inform the Assembly on the process of implementation. Several structures have been established to help in implementing the decade. The first is a decade advisory board, which would advise the IOC governing bodies and will provide on the implementation of the decade. Then a decade coordination unit has been established at the IOC headquarters, which will be the central unit looking at how the decade will be implemented. Decade coordination offices are proposed focusing on specific region or thematic areas. This would basically be located in either UN entities or IOC decentralized offices, and would focus on catalyzing and coordinating decade actions, including calls for decade actions, organizing and coordinating decade review processes, promoting cooperation, communication, monitoring, and resource mobilization. Then we had decade collaborative centers, which will be proposed by member states or other non-UN agencies, and decade implementation partners, which is basically open to all sorts of stakeholders. Now, what have we done in the region? In the region, we've had a process for developing a regional implementation plan, which is still ongoing. During this process, we've taken into account the key guiding frameworks developed by the African Union, including the Agenda 2063, the African Integrated Maritime Strategy, the African Blue Economy Strategy. And we've also noted that AU itself declared the Decade of African Oceans and Seas to run from 2014 to 2025. And we are looking at how we link these two decades. We had the first regional consultation at the beginning of last year in Nairobi, organized jointly by IOC, UNEP, UOMSA, GIZ, CODIO, and SCORE. During this meeting, several key issues were identified that need to be addressed. Under the outcome area of clean ocean, there's marine litter and microplastics, oil spills, chemicals, eutrophication. Under predictable ocean, we had data and observations, research and modeling, governance. Similarly, under healthy ocean, under safe ocean, under productive ocean, and transparent ocean. I'll be able to share this so that you can be able to go through them. In addition to these priority areas, 5 key recommendations came out of the regional consultation. One was the importance of harnessing the demographic dividend. The participants recognized that the African population is really young. More than 70% of the population is below 30. So there's a need to see how we can empower them to be able to assist in achieving the decade outcomes. The second one was catalyzing research in several fields that were identified and linking the research results to society application. The third was improving the quality and quantity of research and transforming lives through innovation and robust application of ocean science. The fourth was strengthening research through stronger integration of science, ocean observing system, and improved science policy interface. And the third, the last one was establishment of university-based ocean innovation incubator hubs supported by the private sector. What have we done since the start of the decade? IOC is working together with UOMSA on a regional gap analysis. we have 4 experts that are working on this, covering 3 Western Indian Ocean, Eastern Atlantic, Mediterranean, and Red Sea, and then one of them coordinating the entire process. We are expecting them to identify the current state of knowledge and data in ocean science, transmitted data research, as well as existing infrastructure, networks, partnerships, and resources in the region, to identify the knowledge gaps, scientific priorities, potential baselines, and provide recommendations on areas that we could work on together during the decade. The work they are doing is based on, first, the report of the regional consultations we had last year, and on similar initiatives that have been undertaken by various organizations and programs on the continent. We are expecting to have a regional kickoff conference, 13th to 15th December, where the results of the work will be presented. Prior to that kickoff conference, we'll have a pre-conference workshop from 6th to 8th of December, where we'll present both the regional gap analysis and national priorities and strategies that we are also surveying separately. We are working with the Early Career Scientist Network to develop a booklet on the decade and also on other decade communication tools. I think I'll end there and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mika, for sharing those insights. And I remember quite lively being there in Kenya. It was the last time actually that I traveled, so fond memories of that. Are there any questions from the audience? I see no hands. Okay, Mika, maybe as the name implies, it's a decade, and for us researchers, we usually count in projects of like a year or 2 years. And also Voyagen is only so far funded only for 2.5 years now. How can such endeavors also support the long-term goals of the agenda? I can imagine that some people might be afraid of making a commitment that might reach beyond the actual project phase. Is there any way for us to assist?
Yeah, when we are looking at programs to be implemented during the decade, we are looking at different time scale. There will be projects that contribute to the decade. There will be other activities, even things like the training programs, which will contribute to the decade. So the time scale would really vary. The reason why we chose the 2030 is that that is the duration of the SDGs. So we are trying to link it to the achievement of the SDGs and the UN Decade of Action.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I see that Christine has her hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Christine from Kenya. Thank you for the interesting topic about UN Decade of the Ocean. I've always been wondering, how is it? It's 10 years to 2030. So what major output do you envision for these programs to achieve? And especially when it comes to awareness creation, we keep on saying awareness creation to the local community. What measures are we going to adapt to ensure that the output is measurable? And additionally, when you look at the blue economy prospects of the African countries, this is the time that we want to maximally exploit our oceans amid the issue of climate change, and also lessons from those who have maximally exploited their ocean. Example, the British are now calling for a stop to ocean dredging. So what are we going to do as Africans? Because this is our time now to exploit the resources, and yet the globe is now changing towards sustainable energy, clean energy, sustainable use. So what is the way forward for African states?
Africa really takes the ocean serious. Like I indicated, Africa actually declared this decade of oceans before the UN. One thing which is normally interesting is that Africa normally has the source of really good ideas. even the Agenda 2063, which was adopted by the AU in is it 2014? If you look at it in detail, most of the Agenda 2030 of the UN is tailored on the elements of the Agenda 2063. Similarly, we copied the idea of the decade from the African Decade of Oceans and Seas. And if you look at the various processes, frameworks that Africa has come up with, the Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy 2050 is a very detailed roadmap of what our countries are thinking of in terms of harnessing the oceans. And if you go through it, you see that the countries in the region really understand exactly what the problems are. It's a very detailed blueprint of where exactly we want to go. If you look also at the African Blue Economy Strategy, it also really provides a detailed roadmap of what we need to do. Therefore, Africa is not behind. Africa Union has this year created a Directorate of Blue Economy, which will be focusing on ensuring that all these issues are, all these frameworks are implemented. And the UN Decade of Ocean Science provides the opportunity of supporting the African Union with the science that will be required to harness the ocean economy in a sustainable way. So the key word is sustainability. We'll not run away from harnessing the economy because there might be issues which might arise, but we'll look at how best do we address those issues. So what I'd like to emphasize is that Africa is taking its blue economy seriously, and Africa would like to harness the blue economy, and us as scientists should provide the information required to support our countries in harnessing the blue economy.
That sounds like a great start for a discussion to be continued in the chat, actually. So please share your opinions there. For the next talk, we now welcome Jose Guerrero. He's going to talk about an African maritime integrated policy, blue growth, and a new ocean governance. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen. Is everything okay? Okay, just a short presentation of myself. I used to be a marine biologist. I work now in marine governance and environmental governance. I'm a professor at the Faculty of Science at Lisbon, and I've been working in the region since 1991. And the idea is just to pick up in the words of the last speaker, and particularly to show how Africa has embraced the idea of blue growth and blue economy in the past years. But first, the questions that we must raise. And the first question is, why are we talking now about blue growth, blue economy, maritime spatial planning, ocean governance? What really triggered this movement at the global scale? Which transformations brought to the governance model? And how did Africa embrace this challenge? A little bit of history, just to remember people, the day ocean governance changed. Back in September 28, 1945, just 26 days after the end of World War II, the President of the United States, Harry Truman, declared unilaterally the right to explore oil in the continental shelf. This is not just a single declaration. This is for the first time a third use being introduced at the maritime space, besides fishing and shipping, which were the traditional uses. And that triggered a movement all over the world. Actually, Latin American countries also claim the right to explore oil in the continental shelf, and that really triggered the first conference on the United Nations Law of the Sea. This is the law that we have now, and this is the law that we have to govern the ocean, which entered into force in 1994. As you know, it's the most complex legal regime that we have, and it's the way that we govern the ocean. But this, in fact, triggered a new movement. And in 1998, the United Nations declared precisely this year as the International Year of the Oceans. And Lisbon exhibition, Expo 98, gathered 160 delegations, 11 million visitors, and was probably the biggest show of science and technology related to the oceans before this new decade, and also the first report on the future of our oceans. Well, this somehow triggered a new challenge all over the world. And indeed, there is a starting point in the European Union, as you may remember, back in 2006, when the question of integrated maritime policy was addressed, particularly with the Blue Book. This Blue Book, which defended the idea that there were common competences and shared resources that could trigger a new blue economy based on blue growth. And blue growth was precisely based on 5 strategic sectors, namely aquaculture, coastal tourism, marine biotechnology, ocean energy, and deep sea mining. And these were the new sectors which were based in new science and technology. But then we were introducing new uses of the maritime space. And for the first time since the Second World War, a series of different uses occupying maritime space lead to the need of a new instrument, which was called maritime spatial planning, in order to avoid the conflict of uses, conflict among stakeholders, and to assure the investments of the investors. Well, you may be asking now, what does this got to do with my central study? The question is that this movement reached the Rio Conference of 2012. And although the conference was initially designed to be around green economy, it tended to be the first world conference discussing blue economy. And there are several authors that wrote about this, several papers. One of them said it was indeed the greatest waste ever that oceans governance and blue economy had in a global conference. And particularly, this was led by small island developing states together with African countries as a balance to green economy, and also trying to develop, as the first World Conference in Singapore really highlighted, the potential for the blue economy. Actually, the previous speaker told that Africa was not behind. Well, the question is, Africa was not, because since the very beginning in 2009, Africa addressed this issue, particularly with the decision of the Assembly in 2009 to develop the Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy. And the task force was created in 2011. And the first draft was issued in 2012. And finally, in 2014, the blue economy is addressed in a meeting in Seychelles. And the African Union considers this as a trigger for all economic development and social development. And finally, the Integrated Maritime Strategy is approved. And together with the decade of the African Seas and Ocean, and finally, we have a roadmap and a blue economy strategy in 2019. And so, even before the United Nations assumes blue economy has a way to go, actually Africa has developed its own homework, and several countries are indeed following the recommendations of the 2 main documents that we can set on, trying to find which are the main drivers for this new blue economy. On one hand, the Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy 2050, with several challenges, particularly to establish a combined exclusive maritime zone of Africa, but also the question of improving integrated coastal zone management, but above all, defining quite clearly which are the 5 strategic sectors for blue economy in Africa: fisheries, aquaculture, shipping, transportation, sustainable energy, environmental sustainability, and governance. And what about governance? Actually, the issue of blue economy entered the agenda 2063 actually in the Expiration 1, and highlighting the role of blue ocean economy on the global development of Africa. You may know that the projections from the blue economy strategy for 2063, it's the number of jobs should correspond to 5% of the active population in Africa. And the increase in the incomes are quite ambitious. Probably you know that with the 38 coastal states in Africa, nevertheless, South Africa was one of the very first states to develop a specific program to enhance blue economy, integrated in the Operation Bakiza for sustainable development, and developed the first legal framework for maritime spatial planning. But it's not the only case. And this is research we are conducting, and that we have already published some papers on this. Maybe some information, it's not updated because governments do change, but nevertheless, what this picture shows, it's the impact that these strategies on maritime economy and blue economy have in the several governments. They change ministries, and ministries for maritime economy arise, or ministries for fisheries and blue economy from Cape Verde to Seychelles, or in South Africa, or even in Senegal with fisheries and maritime economy. But together, they develop also specific, each and every country, they develop specific policy documents. They develop, again, new agencies for maritime economy, and maritime spatial planning is also being developed as pilot projects or already as legal instruments going on in several countries. So this is a movement crossing from West to East Africa, and particularly in coastal states and small island developing states. What lessons to learn? The first one, it's for the very first time in the history of mankind, we are exploring the oceans at 4 levels: at the surface, at the column of the water, at the seabed, and the subsoil of the ocean with new technologies. And this is probably the biggest revolution since 1945. But again, my point is, and I work on governance, that sometimes we forget that we have impacts on the 3 levels of governance. Impacts on the government structures, creating new ministries dedicated to the sea or to blue economy. We had to create new institutional frameworks, being Director General for Maritime Affairs or more maritime economy or maritime policy. These are all real examples, existing examples. And moreover, we had to develop new policy instruments, from integrated maritime strategies to blue growth strategies, or even the legal framework with the law on the management of maritime space in Mozambique, for example, or the MSP Act in South Africa. So what triggered? Answer the first question. What triggered all of this? We had science and technology to introduce new uses in maritime space. These new uses and this new science and technology get us a sea of opportunities through blue economy. But that blue economy lead to design of new economic vectors and required integrated maritime policy. And maritime space governance and planning change with those drivers. And finally, governments had to adapt their policies, structures, institutional frameworks to this new movement. But we do have challenges ahead. We have the challenge of the ocean science for sustainable development this decade to assure the sustainability of economic exploration of the oceans, the ecosystem approach of management of maritime space, the monitoring of this maritime space, and above all, the special planning of abyssal funds and the expansion of marine protected areas to the areas beyond national jurisdiction, as several of us define. I do thank you, and I hope to see you in Lisbon and the World Conference on Oceans next June 22. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. That was a really nice talk showing us all the ways we have to improve policymaking. Due to the time we are running a bit behind, I would kindly ask the next speaker, Laura Weyand, on stage. She's going to talk about collaborative processes in marine regions to enable collective action. Case study of the Marine Regions Forum. All the questions you have for Jose, please post them in the chat and we can engage there. Thanks a lot.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I hope you can see my screen too.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so my name is Laura Weyand. I'm a research associate at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam. And firstly, thank you so much for this invitation to talk at the WIOGEN conference. I hope you're all having wonderful sessions and great input and discussions. So today I'll be talking about collaborative processes in marine regions to enable collective action, a case study of the Marine Regions Forum. So the current ocean management and governance frameworks are often referred to as fragmented and often critiqued for not really effectively addressing threats to the ocean. And a well-recognized enabler of transformative change towards sustainability is the evolving cluster of collaborative approaches. So for example, participation and also transdisciplinary practices. And although integrated marine governance through things such as stakeholder engagement across sectors and across all levels is increasingly being committed to in ocean governance, they're actually far from being widely implemented. So there is still a strong need for more collaboration in and amongst marine regions. So in this endeavor, the Marine Regions Forum was established. It actually emerged from commitments made by Germany and the European Union at the UN Ocean Conference in New York, and also at the Our Ocean Conference in Malta. And their announcement voiced their support to establish a multi-stakeholder and cross-sectoral platform to strengthen regional ocean governance. And in the next slides, I'll explain how we implement this and which approaches we use when collaborating with stakeholders, and also the research that we conduct to support this and to evaluate it. So the key pillars to the Marine Regions Forum are the following concepts. Firstly, it is to engage across stakeholder groups and actors at the regional level. It also provides an informal space for joint learning to support regional action and international governance processes by complementing rather than competing with these. And we also do this by applying a co-creative and transdisciplinary as well as participatory approach. So we work across different scales in order to strengthen regional ocean governance. First, by supporting progress within marine regions, such as in the Western Indian Ocean region. We're also advancing dialogue between marine regions in order to facilitate a cross-regional learning process. And we're also giving regional ocean governance a voice in global processes, such as through the regional contextualization of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, in particular SDG 14. And in order to conduct the research, we essentially have two different approaches. Firstly, we look at how to advance and facilitate multi-stakeholder and cross-sectoral dialogue processes. And we do this by co-creating participatory spaces with stakeholders, which includes, for example, the Marine Regions Forum conference itself, which we hosted in 2019. We're also conducting workshops with participants and also conducting other stakeholder engagement processes. And a second part of our research approach is to really understand the conditions needed for regional transformation. And we do this by assessing our participatory spaces through qualitative research and also self-reflexivity. So after the first Marine Regions Forum conference took place, we wanted to review the outcomes of the collaborative process so far. And for this research that we conducted, we reviewed the challenges and opportunities that stakeholders are currently facing when engaging across sectors and stakeholder groups within and between marine regions, and also to critically examine the Marine Regions Forum itself as a case study and look at what added value it contributes to, and also look at the transformative potential of this. And the data was gathered through conducting qualitative interviews that were analyzed using social science methods, and the outcomes of which were published in a Frontiers in Marine Science special issue earlier this year. And I'd be more than happy to drop the link to this paper into the chat after the presentation. So through the research, we wanted to find out what the added value is of the Marine Regions Forum. And our findings include the following 4 points. So firstly, it provided the regional contextualization of global frameworks, such as the SDGs. It also provided an informal collaborative space for marine regions, which is still considered to be a rarity or uncommon. It also facilitates the recognition for the need for common regional goals and collective harmonized action. And lastly, it supports joint learning and knowledge integration within processes rather than for processes. And so this leads me into the last section of this presentation, which is just to give you a brief overview of how the Marine Regions Forum is being taken forward now and how to engage with us. So to further support collaborative processes in marine regions, the project will be taken forward by continuing these participatory approaches, as well as research to complement and reflect on this process. And we have currently 2 foci. So firstly, it's to apply a regional focus on the Western Indian Ocean to support the transformative ocean action in that region, and also to continue to foster exchanges between marine regions and also between the regional and the global level. And we aim to host the next Marine Regions Forum conference in the Western Indian Ocean in late 2022 or early 2023, pending the development of the pandemic, of course. And we're currently conducting preparatory research for this and also engaging with stakeholders. And to this end, we are currently in preparation for a workshop, which is most likely going to be held in end of November, so the 29th of November. And the aim here is to engage with key actors and to really co-develop the concept of the Marine Regions Forum Conference. And yeah, if you are interested, just let me know by reaching out or sending an email, but the invitation will likely be circulated soon. And we are also currently already co-developing this with our regional partners, Cordio East Africa, as well as the UNEP Nairobi Convention. So yeah, thank you. I hope that was interesting for you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Yeah. Oh, transitioning directly to Rebecca.
Thanks, Hauke, and thanks, Laura. That was really interesting. And I think also Angelique yesterday highlighted the the benefits of the Marine Regions Forum for integrated or more holistic, an ocean dialogue, but also getting to a framework that is more holistic. So you said that you're planning to have the next Marine Regions Forum in 2022, 2023. So you don't see any possibility to move to a virtual format through a Marine Regions Forum? Or what's your stance on virtual formats for this kind of things?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think we've seen in the last year, nearly 2 years now, that the virtual format is a really, really great way of keeping up your current partnerships and also developing new ones. And we're definitely considering also making this a virtual / or perhaps more hybrid event. But I do think that's also allowing or permitting that the pandemic allows, and we would also very much like for this to be a process for regional partners to really get together, because something that we found that was really important in these kind of collaborative processes at the regional level, which can also be translated to the local level and perhaps the global level too, is that you need to have this kind of trust building exercise, which you also highlighted in your presentation. And you need to have inclusivity and processes to develop common goals, and these need to be interactive but also continuous. So we're definitely, of course, considering this, but we just need to
Would be really interesting to see a hybrid format, because I think also these kind of workshops are very limited in the number of participants, and would be nice to see how you can reach more inclusivity through virtual formats. So interested to see how it develops. Thanks.
Definitely. Thank you.
Any more questions from the audience? No, doesn't seem to be the case. Then thanks again, Laura, for this interesting talk. It's an interesting network to follow and an interesting approach, definitely to stay up to date on. Shannon just posted the link, so everybody can head over after the conference and check out what they are doing at the Marine Regions Forum. So to the last point of today, we were really thrilled when we learned earlier this year that one of our management committee members and workgroup leaders received a very special recognition of his hard work and dedication. Dr. Pobea Mahatante was actually promoted to the new position of Madagascar's Minister of Fisheries and Blue Economy. And as humble as he is, in one of our latest discussions, he credited actually his experience as a senior management member of Voyagen partly to gaining this position. While I think that is a very big overstatement from his side, we are still even more honored that he continues to play a very active role in our management committee, and that he agreed on closing the so-called scientific part of this conference now after day 2. Unfortunately, we received a message this morning that he cannot do it in person because he was called on important other duties, but still he squeezed in time or of his precious time to record something for us. And I hope that can be played now for us as the closing remarks of today's session.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Africans, dear scientists, young early career scientists. Good morning from the sunny city Antananarivo in Madagascar. My name is Dr. Mahatante Tsimanauhati Apobert, leader of the Voyagen Working Group number 1, Nutritional Security, Sustainable Fisheries, Aquaculture and Livelihood, and freshly appointed Minister of Fisheries and Blue Economy in Madagascar. I would like first of all to thank the Voyagen team for having organized the 2 days conference on ocean governance to allow scientists and earlier scientists like you to exchange knowledge and also, let's say, to hear new informations on the advancement of the research in our area. I mean, in the Indian Ocean, mainly the Western Indian Ocean. I would like also to emphasize the fact that as being one of the founding members of the WIOGEN, I am very proud. I am very happy today that this conference has finally happened. And it is a pity that because of the pandemic, we were not able to have this conference, to have the physical attendance in his conference, just because that would be much better to have the physical meeting rather than in this virtual meeting. But still, it is very important just because it allows us to communicate, to exchange, to share informations, to share outcomes of research, and finally, but last but not least, to make our voice heard so that the process of decision making will consider our voice. Talking about sustainable use, equitable use, responsible use of resources within the Indian Ocean region, it is very important. And why it is so important? Because of the current climate change that influence the stock, because of the bad governance that is seen and observed in many countries, and all of these problems need to be addressed. And that's why we are here. We are here to not only make our voice heard, but also to share recommendations, to share some suggestions, and to help decision makers taking the right decision. When it comes to promote the blue economy in our region, I take, for example, the case of Madagascar. Our government aims to make this sector of fishery and blue economy to become one of the biggest pillars for the economic development while protecting the marine ecosystems for the benefit of the whole people. How to come and how to realize, to implement such a very big vision? It is very easy. It is very much, let's say, more easier that we have this all together. We have this network to allow us to exchange in more informations and more insightful outcomes. So that's why I would like to particularly address to all earlier scientists in Africa and mainly in Indian Ocean region to take the responsibility to deepen more and to, let's say, foster the collaboration among scientists, between institutions, between countries, just because our goal is the same, to make the next generation inheriting the existing resources for their sustainable and responsible use. So tomorrow, there will be another opportunity for us to know more about the regional governance policy for our region. And that will be led by the Nairobi Convention that I would like to thank here. So that will be opportunity for the whole young, earlier career scientists in our region to know more about what is going on, how decision was taken, and how decision should be taken, and how you, me, all of us can take responsibility in this process, can take action in this process, and make this process much transparent and understood by all of the stakeholders. So I would like to sensitize and to encourage all of the scientists within the region also to follow that session with the Nairobi Convention for our information, but also for us to inform the others that wouldn't be available to attend that conference. So lastly, once again, I would like to thank the Wyogene team. I would like to thank all of the participants, all of the speakers for your efforts, for having, let's say, taking part in this conference. And that was the first conference, but the second, the third, and so on will be coming. And we think that we will always have your participation. We will always have your attention. And that time, I think that it will be held on a physical meeting to allow us to interact, to allow us to exchange more, and to allow us to share knowledge and informations from our respective country in order to improve the ocean governance system in our respective country. As one of the Wyogene founding members, as one of the Wyogene working group leaders, and as a scientist, I would like to witness here that through Wyogene, through WYOMSA, through the Nairobi Convention, and through other regional organizations, I have learned a lot. I have learned a lot through the exchange, through as well the discussions, and through as well the readings that I had. So I would like to sensitize here all of the scientists within the Indian Ocean to keep working together, to collaborate, to foster this collaboration between institutions within the Indian Ocean to improve the ocean governance system in our region. So on behalf of the Wyogene, I would like to declare close the 2 days conference on ocean governance in Indian Ocean. And I hope that the conference was very insightful, very inspiring, and I think it was very fruitful through the information exchange and from the contacts that we have exchanged as well. So long live to Wyogene, and long live to all scientists within the ocean, the Indian Ocean region. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Impressive talk. I'm trying to regain my speech and my voice. Yeah, there's not much to add from my side, I think. Hopefully you made lots of new contacts. The Padlets are filling. You are talking about new projects. Think about the Meerwissen and Blue Action Fund calls for timely opportunities. And fear not, this is not the end of the conference, as Paubert said. Tomorrow will be another treat by the Nairobi Convention Secretariat. They will take us on a tour to discuss topics revolving around the new regional ocean governance strategy that they are drafting at the moment. So get some good rest. Make sure to come back in tomorrow. Rebecca, you wanted to ask for the picture, right?
Yes, please switch on your cameras. We'll have a picture taken now.
Your lovely face.